Just a background, this is a study, it was a longitudinal study. My time is grabbing me sometimes. Which we did in a place called Ngilandi, which is the border of Swaziland and Mpumalanga. It's in the middle of nowhere. We're actually surprised at the time that we did that we could see T-shirts also arriving in that area. We're really surprised. In terms of service, very little, but the T-shirts you see, what I'm talking about. Yeah, so did this study with Prof. Lisa Leverson and also Professor Food, Maximus Food. We within the Center of Study of Resilience at UP Faculty of Education. So, yeah, much is said in terms of what community engagement is and where we're at in terms of the nation. I mean, in relation to your places like Australia and America, given that they're advanced based on the timing when they started. But we have also moved. We have moved. Yesterday, those of you who might have attended the session that I presented, I indicated that, for instance, we also used to do volunteer work and work in silos as UP, University of Pretoria. And we used to speak of community engagement as a third pillar in higher education, but we have moved from there. We realized, no, it's not. It's actually embedded in teaching, learning, and research. So we as a university, we don't separate community engagement from teaching, learning, and research. It's not a pillar, it's part of that. When you're teaching, you also use community engagement. You engage the student with the community. They learn outside the four corners of the classroom. So this is one of the projects that shows that in terms of community engagement, and also produce papers in terms of research. Hence, this work has been published. So that's what we talk about in terms of community engagement. Maybe for the benefit of those that were not there yesterday, but it was a different presentation, I will highlight this, that when we say community engagement is embedded in teaching, learning, and research, we've got over 230 modules that includes community engagement right from first year. We involve our students right from first year. So in this particular partnership with the rural school in Mpumalanga, the school is actually called Ngilandi. Ngilandi is in England. So it was translated to Ngilandi, yeah. So we had 5 partners. Who are the partners? It's the parents or the caregivers of the learners at that particular school, the teachers at the school, the students clients who are doing grade 9, and also grade 9, we're focusing on those particular learners, the grade 9. Academic service learning students from university, these are the master students that were doing their research there, and the researchers. So those 5 are the community partners that I'm talking about in this particular context. By definition, we say community engagement must be planned from UP, that's how we define it, and must be application of the resources that we have with our external partners in such a way that whatever we do, it must be mutually beneficial for all the partners involved. Everyone who lives that, are not necessarily live, but who participate in any particular community engagement, they must benefit something. That's a prerequisite in terms of community engagement. Plan. We don't just say, oh, tomorrow because there's this and that and requirement, quickly let's do this, and then we show that no, that's not plan. We plan way ahead of time. There's logistics, there's preparing of students in terms of orientation, there's finances in terms of transport. We subsidize our students in terms of transport. Hence, even in this particular context, for students to travel over 200 kilometers to Ngilandi, Osuk, the area, it needs money. So, and its resources, yes, they are limited and we need to use them carefully. Little bit more in terms of the context. So that partnership, it was called, or it's called FLY, Flourishing Learning Youth Community Engagement Partnership. And with this particular secondary school there, as I said, in Ngilandi, and more often than not, I'm glad it's coming up again that we tend to do activities and label them community engagement, but literature says no, we should stop there. We should call it what it is and call community engagement what it is, because there must be a mutual benefit for all the partners. So with FLY, those principles were applied, and the learners, for instance, they were benefiting in terms of the psychological service. I mean, even in a city, not all, like particularly in township schools within a city, you find that even in a city, you find the school doesn't have psychological services. They have to outsource them. So those learners had that from the master students, educational psychology students. So it's a benefit for them to have that and have the master student guiding them in terms of what to do. And the master students also benefited in terms of their research, eventually, produce their dissertations. So are the PhD students and the researchers that were involved. The parents also benefited in terms of their children were supported in terms of the homework that they had to do, and also it is a support to have somebody guide your learner, your child in terms of career choices. It's a support that the parents benefit for free. You pay for this service. Just contact an educational psychologist and ask for career guidance session. You'll hear how much you have to pay. You may even need a medical aid just to avoid paying cash. So those are the benefits that we talk about, saying people should benefit. So in terms of methodology, we use participatory reflection action and methodology, PRA, precisely because it has to do with issues of power relation, inequality, and social justice, which is what we wanted to see addressed, and issues of equal participation and respect of the partners. We don't even call them, what do they call them? Mainly in science, is it research, not clients, or to show that they are not even part of your party, they're just your sample out there. We don't forget the exact term anyway that they sometimes use in science to refer to the participants. It has its own advantages and disadvantages. That is this methodology of collecting data. Part of some of the advantages that it enable local people to take control of their own development. That's what it does. And in terms of knowledge generation, core knowledge generation in particular, it allows for that, it mobilizes and gives that a platform, mutual benefit. I'm repeating myself here. So that it's inclusive in terms of allowing the marginalized people to be part of the process. However, there are disadvantages just as much as there are where there's advantage, there's also a disadvantage. You just have to weigh them and see how it works. For instance, the issue of power relations, some may exert their power, depending on who they are, in issues of ethics, gender. In South Africa in particular, we know our context, given our history of apartheid, can imagine let me qualify my statement, some of the master's students were white, some of the researchers were white. Going to a rural school, it's remote, it's closer to, you can actually walk to Swaziland, closer to the border. Can you imagine some of them, it was for the first time, some of them, one or two of the learners in that community to see a white person. Can you see those power relations in terms of that interaction, that excitement? Yeah, anyway. So those are some of the disadvantages. And if you are aware of that, you know how to manage them, how to continue with the process without hindering the actual work that needs to be done. And in terms of the theoretical framework, we developed a framework called Progressive Global Citizenship Theoretical Framework. Let me say, I should have said it earlier on maybe. When I use the word global citizenship, I sometimes, even in this context, use it interchangeable with community engagement. So understand this word in that context. And also this framework, also understand it within the framework of transformative emancipatory framework, which many of us are familiar with. So it builds on that. Some of the assumptions is that it allows for engagement, for critical engagement in terms of using this particular framework, and it also influences knowledge construction, that the core generation of knowledge. It influences all the partners that are there in terms of how they do that. And then it also recognizes the local knowledge and enhance cognitive justice, because we don't go out to teach, we go out to learn and also teach. There's so much that we learn from community partners. So both partners are there to learn from each other. Here are some of the findings in terms of this research is that higher education Higher Education Community Engagement Partnership provides human capital support to marginalized communities. And such, it reflects in this particular context, in these findings of this study, it reflected in terms of the support that the students receive in terms of career guidance and psychological services. The academic service learning students view themselves as agents who facilitated career guidance session for the learners in that community. Underline the word agent. They were just there as agent to facilitate that, not provider as such. And all the 5 community partners agreed that fly intervention added value by motivating students, that is through learners, in terms of their studies. And another thing is that higher education supports teachers in career development. The participant reported that higher education also supported teachers and equipping them with skills for development. So you remember I said right from the beginning that everyone should benefit. So yeah, the teachers that they benefited. And another phenomenon that we observe here is that although we're partnering with this particular school in Gilali, we observed that the teachers were also transferring knowledge to the local schools as well, which was an added benefit. It was not our primary intention, so we recorded this as a finding, which is great. So it was not just limited to the direct people that we were working with. I just want you to hear some of the voices of the non-researcher partners. Non-researcher partners, I'm specifically referring to the 3, the caregivers, the parents, the teachers. Is it the caregivers, parents, teachers, and who else? Yeah, those 3 are the non-researcher partners in this particular context. They say it will give us skills on how to intervene and guide child-headed homes. There are some of the homes that were headed by children, and in terms of this partnership, it supported them in terms of how to support those learners. And then they say the researchers have assisted us with strategies to meet the students' needs, and they've empowered us with knowledge and skills. So those are some of the benefits. And here's the final one, a grade 9 learner saying that, look, we have also benefited in terms of I wanted to study, but I didn't know where to start in terms of the studies that I wanted to do. But with the intervention of these master's students, educational psychology in particular, they have helped me to be able to know exactly what to do. Yeah, so those are the findings. Look, it's like I said, it was a longitudinal study. So I'm just sharing briefly. I just extracted one of the theme. There's a lot that came out of this, so I just extracted one. So what's our recommendation going forward based on these findings? That is that it's important as higher education that when we train students, we should train them in such a way that we entrench the principle of social justice. And again, those that were there yesterday, when we speak of social justice, when I speak of social justice, I speak of it broadly, inclusive of cognitive justice as well, which is important. We're not necessarily interested in the material redistribution only, but marginalized communities in terms of knowledge. They need to be acknowledged. Their contribution is important. So we mustn't generate knowledge or rather co-generate knowledge, but when coming to acknowledgement, when coming to publication, their names don't appear anywhere. So that hinders the issues of cognitive justice. So that's why I'm mentioning that. Secondly, it's important that the students are involved right from first year when they do community work. Why first year? Can you imagine an engineering student or medical student as an example? They are studying first year, second, fourth year, no community engagement. Fifth year, you want to come and introduce community engagement. They'll tell you, no, that's an add-on subject. It's not important for them. They are the science students. So they want, it will become a burden for them. They may even reject it. However, with us at UP, we introduce right from first year. All our students, by the time they graduate, they've participated in community engagement one way or another in more than one module. So that's important. So your medical students, your engineers, as an example, they also see community engagement as a critical part of the work that they do. In any case, they are going to work in communities, so why should they be separated from community engagement? And by the way, many of them are actually going to work in under-resourced communities in terms of we've got state-of-the-art equipment in our university. You go to under support, which is the only faculty, which is the only faculty in South Africa that is the Faculty of Veteran Science. The equipment that are there, it's amazing at the hospital. But we expect our students to be able to go to Machimana-University as an example. It's a township it's a rural community, a village actually, in the northwest. They need to be able to operate a dog, a cow in that atmosphere. I've seen them, they are able to do that. Why? When they go out and work, they won't have those resources that the university affords them at the university level. So community engagement also offers that platform. Anyway, so I think I've elaborated why we should involve people from first year. Higher education plays an urgent and a proactive role in terms of raising awareness of the resources that are there. There are resources in our communities. They can do things by themselves without necessarily outsourcing. But what they need somebody to help them to tap into those resources, the skills, the knowledge, the material. They have them, they are there. Let's help them and encourage them. That's what they need to be able to use them effectively. Similarly, we also recommend that finally, if anyone were to do a similar study, consider doing it with a quantitative methodology, because we use qualitative. Yes, with qualitative you can generalize, but within the context, a similar context. But with quantitative, you can generalize largely. So that will be a recommendation. So it will minimize the methodological limitations that we had in terms of using qualitative study. Finally, the positive effects of community engagement were felt really by the members within that area, and facilitated development in terms of the teacher, particularly teacher development in that sense. There was consensus in terms of the building of human capital. The reporting from the participants, they said yes, they've seen evidence of that. Yeah, thank you. So that's before he shows me that card. Yeah, that's the study in terms of life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. Can we please take one question, and then the rest of the questions we'll take over lunch, if that's okay.
Yes. Thank you for
I don't know. Thank you very much for your presentation, by the way. I'm trying to. I had a lot of questions in my mind as you were presenting, in terms of like the practical aspect of it. I heard you like the overview aspect of it, but like, can you give us like the intervention itself, the duration, how long were the students there? What did they actually do? I know they ran assessments. Was it a one-day thing? How was feedback given? Yeah, if you can dwell a little bit more on that to understand if one wanted to do something similar, what was it that you actually did in this? What was the intervention? And then I also want to like follow up. I know it's one question, but I'm taking advantage of the fact that I'm the same person. There was an answer you gave to the question of how much is much when it comes to community engagement, the 5% situation. And you gave an answer that was, for me, interesting in terms of, I'm in a space, in a high school space, but doing community engagement. And I arrived in that space where we had once-off events that were being done. And now we're introducing community engagement in terms of like duration, etc., like in terms of like mutually beneficial, etc. And I'm wondering, because your answer was, let's call those things what they are, which is a one-day intervention. They took pictures, and I want to know, could some of those one-day things be problematic in some instances? I'll give an example. One of the things that we do at our school is what they call like a sort of like an exposure. So you take township kids, you bring them into a private school space for them to see how it is to learn in this space. I'm just trying to take myself into the mind of a grade 4 learner who has now been exposed to this privileged space in terms of what do they walk out with. So when do we draw a line and say, we can't actually do those things? Like there's things that we can't allowed to continue because actually they are harmful to the people,
Yeah.
instead of saying we'll have community engagement and those things.
Yeah.
I hope I'm coherent.
Yeah.
Yes.
You are. It's just that I don't know how much time you give me to explain the 10-year relationship. It was a 10-year relationship in this particular partnership. Okay, so maybe okay, we can talk after.
Sure.
But let me quickly address it in this sense. This particular fly intervention, it was a 10-year partnership with this particular community, and we'll go out there at least 3 times a year to that particular community. We'll spend a week there. We book and stay within the community for a week, meaning from morning 8 o'clock in the morning until 2:30, we're there at the school in terms of the psychological intervention that we're doing at that particular school, and including the research that we're doing. So that's I hope it answers your question. Having said the issue of the these once-off things that we do and call them community, we also have such programs, but they need to be done systematically and planned well in such that, for instance, generally it's enough at least to allocate at least a minimum of 20 hours for community engagement. 20 hours, it can be 2 days or 3 days, which can be spread. So if you have a module, a year module, and the students spend 20 hours, it's enough to cover for that as community engagement. Remember, there's a planning before, there's a reporting as well. So there's all those technicalities. And when I speak of systematic and well planning, I mean that if you happen to do a project that is just for that particular day this year, that's fine. But next year, get your first year or second year student to go to a same community so that there's continuity. Over time, you'll see the results, not just go once, that's it. Then you go to the next one, next year, you just move on. Make sure that there's a system, there's follow-up. Even if it takes long, over time it will build up and you will have students going in different, okay, finally, let me say, also, one thing that helps is in your sites, please try to have a transdisciplinary team that is working on the site that brings and builds continuity and also support for the community. It enhances the work that we do. So that will address the issue of, yes, this particular module came for a day, but there's another one that came for 3 days, another one for a week, and spread it over a year, then the community sees the benefit. Yeah, so it's quite difficult to answer what you were asking me, but yeah, let's maybe talk after